Back in 2018, we featured the BMW X1 xDrive28i. We did a comparison video with it for Test Drive Showdown, and we talked about how that vehicle was as an entry-level sport activity vehicle from the German manufacturer. So what's new for 2020? Well, there are a couple changes. Our snapshot is on this 2020 BMW X1 xDrive28i. Now with a slight refresh both inside and out, it's not a complete generational update, but it brings the exterior look more in line with the new X5 and X7. We're going to be going over what's different about this car and what you need to know if you're in the market for a $50,000 BMW crossover. If you want to know absolutely everything there is to know about the X1, I suggest taking a look at our 2018 video. A lot of that still applies to this vehicle. We're taking a look at the same trim. The xDrive28i uses the same 2-liter turbocharged inline-4 engine, produces 228 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque. Now there are some slight updates to this. We also have the M Sport model this time. Last time we drove it was not the M Sport, and it has been refreshed for this model year. New for 2020 are LED headlights. You also get hexagonal Corona rings for the daytime running lights and new rectangular fog lights. Before they were circular, now they're LED rectangular fog lights. Gives this car a good look to it, as well as being a little bit safer than just the regular bi-xenons that were on here before. The kidney grille has been updated as well. BMW says it's a little bit larger. Out back, the taillights have also been updated. They're tinted with a slightly different look. Tailpipes are bigger at 90 millimeters. That's up 20 millimeters from the previous model year. And also dual tailpipes back there. And we're looking at the M Sport model, as I mentioned, that's been updated for 2020. You have a more aerodynamic and aggressive look to it. New front bumper, new side skirts, new wheel arch trim, and body color rear diffuser. So there's some changes there for that. The car looks really nice, especially in this Misano Blue paint, same color that we had a little while ago on the new BMW Z4 M40i that we featured just before the end of 2019. A couple other features that are new for 2020, a two-tone X1 LED welcome light comes out of the driver's side mirror, looks really cool. You have contrast stitching on the inside, a new gear selector with an updated 8-speed Steptronic transmission. The rest of the car is pretty much the same. We're still using iDrive 6, which isn't a problem. It's still a very competent system. You have Apple CarPlay that's wirelessly controlled, and with this specific configuration, we don't have wireless charging. That was one of the things that we actually disliked when we drove the 2018 model. It would not fit my iPhone 8, but there's different ways to configure it. Ours, as mentioned, $50,100 Canadian. Now again, we've talked about the X1 before. We've done a comparison with the Mazda CX-5. Let's get on the road now. We're in winter mode here, so we had the chance to test the X1 xDrive28i in the winter in a snowstorm. So let's take it on the road now, see how it performs and handles, and everything else you need to know about the LCI 2020 BMW X1 xDrive28i. So as I mentioned in our brief walk around, this is an update for 2020. We drove the 2018. We've taken this specific vehicle on about a 2,000 kilometer road trip. Weather was actually super cooperative during that time, unlike right now, which is the whole reason why we like testing these vehicles in the winter, because it gives me an opportunity to see how they perform. Now, out of the front camera, you should be able to see, and if you can't, I'll explain it for you. There has been zero plowing. It's been snowing here for at least 4.5 hours, and there has been zero plowing. You can see a couple tracks on the road. You might not be able to see it on the camera, but I definitely can as I'm driving here, and those tracks are probably an hour old at least. But as we come down here towards the main road, traction has been very good. If I were to hit the brakes, a little bit of slippage, just a little bit, that's expected for this type of driving, but xDrive, oh man, that's the whole reason why I like driving these cars, is because they have incredible grip and control in winter like this, and that's why I like driving BMW. We also have a very good set of Pirelli Soto Zero winter tires on here, which also makes a huge difference. But the road here, this is probably one of the worst conditions we've had, considering there's blowing wind coming on this road, so it's actually very patchy. Some of it is clear, a little bit of patches here and there. There's snow, there's accumulation, about an inch or two of accumulation, plus ice. And during the time I was taking the photo for the thumbnail on this, I almost slipped and fell and would have broken my equipment. But yeah, they haven't plowed anything here, which is a good opportunity to see how this vehicle performs. So far, so good. Let's take it at a corner here, give it some power. Oh yeah, man, look at that. Super control coming out of that corner there. That's the whole reason why you buy a car like this and why you need to have those winter tires. It's not just enough to have four-wheel drive, you gotta have both, especially in conditions like this. So we'll try it again, come up here to a stop and give it some power. Oh yeah, look at that go. Oh yeah. Now one thing I've noted, especially considering I've been driving this car for quite a while, is when it's in normal mode, we're in comfort mode, I've turned off the auto stop start because I hate it, and the transmission is in drive. But when you're coming off the line, you've stopped, you're coming off, the engine's running because you've disabled the auto stop start system, there's a little bit of lag. And the only way I figured out how to avoid that is by putting the transmission into sport mode. It's not enough to put the car into sport mode, but the transmission has to be in sport mode. If not, you're going to be lagging. Now watch, I'm coming up to a three-way stop here. Coming here, full stop, gas, oh, there we go. What I've noted, because of this little hiccup, if you want to call it that, as I come to a stop sign, even if it's my right of way, I start to try to go, there's some lag there. So somebody might think, oh, he's letting me go. That's why he hasn't moved his vehicle yet. So there's about a second delay. I'm going to put it now into sport mode for the transmission. And look, aside from the fact that there's little traction, no lag whatsoever, makes for a much better experience. That's really my only complaint with the whole setup here. There hasn't been much change for it aside from the exterior and slight interior bits here and there. But it is enough to make me like it quite a bit. A lot more than I did last year. It still is an entry-level BMW, and you should not think anything otherwise, but it's still a very good entry-level. Would I rather take this over a fully loaded consumer vehicle that's a little bit bigger? Probably not. That's still going to be my major concern. You're really just buying into the fact that it's a BMW. Yes, you do have excellent all-wheel drive control, excellent traction control, and excellent stability control, but man, 50 grand, it's a lot. It's a lot of money for essentially a well-equipped car. It doesn't have anything above and beyond. You do have a HUD, which sometimes is hard to find in this size segment, depending on where you're looking. But honestly, I've enjoyed it. 2,000 kilometers of driving, it's a lot to get to know this car. But what do you really need to know if you're in the market for this? It is the third most popular sport activity vehicle, according to BMW Canada. The X3 and X5 both sell better here in Canada than this, but this still is a very popular vehicle, especially in Europe where the SUV craze hasn't quite hit the same way that it has here. So if you're looking for something small and affordable, relatively speaking, then this is the way to go. I really don't like the Mercedes GLA, and some will probably argue that the new GLB will be closer to this in terms of comparison, and it probably will be. But you know what? After spending the time with this, it's changed my opinion a little bit. Like I said, I like the better look on the outside now. Winter control, pretty much unmatched. It's hard to find something that is better than BMW's xDrive in the winter, especially when paired with the right winter tires. And look, again, we're going into a corner. Ooh. Yeah, man, imagine if they plowed. Why would you ever want to do that? Like, just leave the snow on the road, right? Who cares? Turns it into a skating rink. That's why we're supposed to have winter tires, right? Who needs to have traction? It's more fun this way. Now, 2,000 kilometers is quite a bit for a vehicle that we get off the press fleet, especially from BMW, but we had the opportunity to take it on that road trip, as I mentioned, and during that time, I drove it for 11 hours just with, the odd break to go to the washroom and get coffee. So I had a pretty good idea of how this vehicle is on a long-term trip. And I have to say, despite the fact that this is small and I am huge, I actually really liked it. I wasn't uncomfortable, which is something that I usually find when going on road trips. I find that the seats are a little firm. That's usual for BMW. You have a good amount of space in here, and even my daughter had no issues in the back. Now, obviously, it'd be nice to have an X3 or an X5, but given the size of this, it's not bad overall. And I have to say, for a road trip perspective, the only thing that really took away from our experience was the trunk. We weren't expecting to need to bring so many things back on our trip. But that's, again, based on the size of the vehicle. It worked out really well. Fuel efficiency was also pretty good as well. We'll talk about the fuel economy numbers for our test loop as well as the overall. But during our drive, we did average 9.2 liters per 100 kilometers, which is pretty good for an X1, especially at the 28i trim. It's the only one available here in Canada. But considering it was 2 adults and my child and gear and luggage and stuff like that, not bad at all. Now we'll do something a little silly. We're in sport mode now, sport transmission mode. I'm not going to do launch control or anything like that, but I will kind of give it a go. And you can see here, wow, it got traction exactly where it needed it. Really no slippage whatsoever. We're up to the legal speed limit. I'm not going to be going faster than that, obviously. I'm not going to be doing anything overly silly as we put everything back into comfort mode and regular drive. But man, the traction on this is really good. And that's one of the reasons why you're going to go up to a luxury vehicle, is that added level of safety and security, especially during rough weather like this, because front wheel drive ain't going to cut it when they're not plowing anything. But then it's also the traction control. You can get by without all-wheel drive, but it's the traction control that makes the difference. And BMW just has a lot more experience doing this than the consumer brands do. So you go up to a luxury car like this, yeah, you're getting the features and the brand and all of that fun stuff, but it's the safety stuff, the things that keep you on the road, that are the most important. Where's the road? Where does it end? Where's the curb? There's no real curbs here, but there's ditches, and that would be super fun to be flying into at 55 kilometers an hour, because there's nothing here. But let's see, we did a brake test before. We're at 55 kilometers an hour. Oh no, an emergency. Slamming it on. That stopped it pretty well. I have to say, there wasn't much slippage there considering. So if you're in an emergency situation, really you shouldn't be slamming on the brakes anyway. You should be controlling it a little bit better than that. But yeah, it's doing a really good job. Let's talk fuel economy. The 2020 BMW X1 xDrive28i completed our 100 kilometer test loop in Eco Pro mode at 7.8 liters per 100 kilometers, or 30.2 US miles per gallon. That's about what the 2019 Volvo XC40 did last year. Our road trip came in at 9 liters per 100 kilometers, or 26.1 mpg, and our full week and a half at 9.2 liters per 100 kilometers, or 25.6 mpg. If you go back and watch our episode on the 2018 X1, you'll see a consistent set of likes and dislikes when it comes to this LCI 2020. The exterior refresh is a strong hit for us, giving a much needed update to BMW's entry-level sport activity vehicle. iDrive and wireless CarPlay are still important pluses for this vehicle, and the added ambient lighting color options is also a nice plus for buyers. Finally, we still like BMW's available options on the X1, giving you a solid set of features and customization to build the BMW you ultimately want. Now, last year we had 3 main complaints for the X1. However, and while Android Auto is still not available on any BMWs, we won't add it nor the wireless charger to our list, since our test vehicle didn't come with it. Fuel economy was the only other major issue that we had, though we hadn't adopted our standardized testing back then. BMW says they've updated the Steptronic transmission for 2020 with a different map profile, which might have led to our improved results this time around. But hard dislikes on the X1? There's not much. The transmission lag at the start is a major annoyance, and we experienced some issues with the rear liftgate stopping while opening from the rear handle, which is troubling on a new vehicle. Also, the heated seats didn't get very hot. In fact, we forgot that they were on full power during our road trip. After nearly 2 full weeks with this X1, I can say that it's not only winter certified for life here in Canada, but it's also road trip worthy. If you're looking for an entry-level luxury crossover, the 2020 BMW X1 xDrive28i might just be the one for you.